After moving to that house, my life changed for the worse. I gained haunting memories and phobias, horrifying images stuck in my head that I will never be able to shed. I was 23 at the time, and I had just gotten my first job, but it was out of state, and I had to move away from my family. It was a stressful time in my life. I felt mixed emotions about living in a house by myself, so far away from my family in New Jersey. Mostly a mix of excitement and nervousness. Of course, I didn't have much money at such a young age, so the house I was moving into was kind of old and run down. It was a fixer-upper, to put it lightly, but it did come with a good amount of furniture. I remember the night I arrived at the house after the long drive. It was probably close to 10 o'clock, lugging that giant duffel bag full of clothes to the empty house, dropping a bag on the porch, pushing the key into the keyhole and turning it, unlocking more than just the door, but a whole new chapter in my life. The rest of my life of independence. Of course, at the time I didn't know what I was really walking into. On that first night, I tried to familiarize myself with the house a bit. There was a living room, a kitchen, a dining room, a basement, 2 bedrooms upstairs, and 2 bathrooms. One upstairs and one in the basement. I had the basic necessities furniture-wise. A fridge, an oven and microwave, a couch, a bed and such. All the floors were wooden and a bit creaky. It was more of an ideal place for an old woman, but the price was right. I was so exhausted that I just brushed my teeth and went to sleep on that old bed in the bedroom, not caring how dirty it might have been. The first night I laid awake for probably an hour, with the silence constantly being interrupted by cracks of wood and other house weathering sounds. All was fine the next morning. I ate at the nearest IHOP, got some groceries, and headed back home. Getting out of my car, I saw a woman next door getting into her car. She noticed me. I gave her a wave and slowed down, half expecting her to come over and introduce herself. But all she did was return a wave before getting into her car and driving off. Now, I was used to having unfriendly neighbors, but there was something about the way she looked at me that made me uncomfortable. I detected a hint of worry on her face. I shrugged it off and went inside. I spent the better part of the night watching TV on the old rabbit-eared television that was left in the house. When I decided to call it a night, I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. Due to a force of habit, I shut the door while in the bathroom. But while I was brushing my teeth, I heard the faint sound of a single knock on the bathroom door. I felt my heart drop and I jumped back against the wall in response. The sound caught me off guard. It wasn't the sound of wood settling or anything like that. I distinctly heard the sound of a fist hitting the door. I'm living on my own now. I'm a grown man, so now I have to be a man. I turned the knob and pushed the door open with force, lunging out into the black hallway, expecting to run into somebody, but there was nothing at all. I flipped the light switch to the hallway on. All the doors were still shut just as they were before, except for the door to my bedroom. I took a deep breath and ran straight into the room, literally flailing my arms everywhere, expecting to hit somebody. I stopped and took a good look around the room. I was the only living soul in the room, so that was it. There was no other possible place an intruder could have gone. I would have definitely heard them run down the creaky old steps, and I would have heard any of the doors close. I was at this point convinced it was just my imagination, or more house noises. Maybe a mix of both. I had trouble falling asleep that night. I jumped at every little noise, paranoid of my surroundings. I was acting like a terrified little kid. After flipping over trying to get comfortable for the 100th time, I noticed the door to my bedroom was open. I had not left it open, and then I realized there was something poking in at the edge of the door. I sat up and tried to adjust my eyes to see what the hell the thing was. My eyes adjusted to the dark ever so slightly, but it was enough to make out the object to be the face of a woman, and she was undoubtedly staring right at me, laying in bed. I crawled up in fear, screaming like a 5-year-old. The head moved away from the doorway out of sight. I threw my hand to the desk, shoving things onto the floor, as I desperately tried to find my phone. The feeling of the rubbery case never felt so good in my hands as I dialed 911. I stayed curled up in my bed like a baby until the police arrived. I rushed down the stairs to the front to let them in and explained to the officers that somebody was in my house. One of the officers questioned me, asking how I knew, what they looked like, and where I saw them. I explained that I saw a woman poking her head into my bedroom and just staring at me. I told him it was too dark to make out any discernible features. The 2 officers rushed inside to look for an intruder as I sat by the curb, waiting with the officer that came in the second patrol car. After about 20 minutes, the officers came out and told me they searched every single room and closet, but there was absolutely no sign of anybody. The officers proceeded to ask me some questions, eventually asking if I live alone, to which I responded that I had just moved away from my family all the way in New Jersey. The police officers looked at each other, and one of them stepped forward and claimed that he knew what was going on. The officer said that he's seen this happen many times before. When a young man or woman moves far away from their family, they often get homesick and start to think that they're seeing things, commonly the images of people. It didn't seem impossible. I had no other explanation. The officer assured me that nobody was in my house, and that I just needed some time to get used to living alone. I thanked the officers, and they drove off into the night, leaving me to go back into the house. The next day I had my job orientation around noon. I met a few people who I thought were cool. All of them were from out of state just like me, except for one guy named Jerry. I found out that Jerry actually lived a few blocks away from me. I was happy to know that I would be working with people I could get along with, as making new friends here was my #1 priority. That night, I threw a TV dinner in the microwave and headed up to my room to watch some movies. I called it a night shortly after realizing nothing was on TV. I didn't have anything else to do. I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth again. With the door shut out of force of habit, I had completely forgotten about what had happened the previous night, up until I heard something come from outside of the bathroom down the hall. That's when everything came back to memory. I'm just imagining things again, I told myself. There's nobody in this house, but my positive attitude was shattered when I heard the same exact sound a second time. This time, I could make the sound out to be a fist pounding on the wall in the hallway. No, it wasn't supposed to be real. It can't be real. With one giant boost of confidence, I decided I had to end whatever this was. I swung open the door and stopped in my tracks before getting 2 feet away from the door. Down the hallway by the open door of the extra bedroom, there was the same head, poking down the hall right at me. The lights in the hallway were off, and I couldn't make out any facial features. I couldn't even see her eyes. I let out a loud gasp as my body once again filled with fear. If this was real, I had to confront this woman, so I stomped down the hall trying to seem as intimidating as possible. But as I got within a couple feet of the door, the woman slowly moved her head away from the doorway and out of sight. As soon as I walked through the doorway, I flicked on the light switch and scanned the room. Besides the only 2 pieces of furniture, the king-sized bed and the antique dresser, the room was empty. I got on my hands and knees and looked under the huge bed. Nothing. Then I saw the closet in the corner of the room. This had to be it. She had to be in there. With one swift motion, I turned the knob and swung open the door. Nothing, except for a bunch of hanging ties, old jackets, and a pair of boots on the ground further back in the closet. The inside of the closet smelled disgusting, so I immediately shut the door and let it be. I was left in the empty room scratching my head. There was nobody in there. The officer was right. I was so homesick that my mind was creating phony images of a person. As I was walking out of the room, I felt a sharp pain in my right foot. I lifted my leg up to see what I had stepped on. It was glass. Upon closer inspection, I saw tiny shards of glass scattered all over the floor. Whoever was in charge of cleaning this house did a bad job, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I made a note to self to sweep up the glass and get some air fresheners, because as I came to think about it, the whole house smelled a little funky, and I'm sure that wasn't doing my mind any good considering what was going on. It was another sleepless night, but thankfully I had nothing going on the next day. Come morning, I did some grocery shopping, but when I got home, I realized I had forgotten the air fresheners. I didn't feel like driving back to the store, so I decided I could deal with the house odor for a little while longer. I did a lot of work around the house that day. I put some new furniture in, swept up the broken glass, and I got a good amount of cleaning done. Mainly dusting off all the old furniture so that I didn't feel like I was living in a dead person's house. I went for a bike ride later in the day down the woodsy area of the neighborhood, and when I got back, I cooked myself a dinner for the first time and called it a night. When it came time to brush my teeth, I was almost dreading having to go back in that bathroom after the previous nights, but I brushed my teeth without any interruptions. I breathed a sigh of relief when I was done and continued back to the old rickety bed in my bedroom. Maybe I was finally getting over the delusions. I did my nightly movie watching before turning off the TV to be alone with my thoughts. I was eager to start work, just to end the constant loneliness. I needed something to take my mind off the weird things I had seen. About half an hour later, I finally drifted away into a deep sleep, only to be woken to a loud bang. I sat up while rubbing my head, confused, and that's when I saw it. At the edge of my bed was the woman I had seen before, peering over the bed so that only her head was visible once again. I let out a high-pitched shriek, completely horrified by the disturbing sight. It's not real. It's not really there, I told myself. But it wouldn't go away. It just stayed at the edge of my bed watching me. I looked to my right, at the lamp sitting on the nightstand right next to my bed. I didn't want to feed my mind's tricks and games, but I had to see what this thing looked like. I reached my hand out to the knob on the lamp and clicked it to the right. The bright light of the lamp illuminated the room, along with the face at the end of my bed. And what I saw has been engraved into my mind. This was no ordinary woman. The few hairs that were still attached to her scalp were long, gray, and tangled. Her skin was cracked. Her mouth hung open, revealing stained brown teeth. In her eyes, there weren't any. There were just two gaping black holes in her face. I screamed louder than I knew I could, and flung the pillow across my bed to the thing, and just like that, the thing was gone. My heart was probably beating 300 times a minute, and yet I was frozen in a curled up position in my bed. What had I just seen? I only got about 2 hours of sleep that night. Things seemed to be getting worse. Why would my mind create an image like that? I had no idea what to think anymore, so I called my mom and informed her of what was happening. I didn't want to admit to something like hallucinations, in fear that my mom would think I was sick, and the last thing I wanted to do was worry my mother. But I had no one else to talk about it, so I explained everything, and as expected, she started to freak out and panic, assuming somebody was actually in my house. And then I told her about the awful decaying features of the woman's head. I detected in her tone immediately that her mood shifted from worried to confused and concerned. She told me to get as much sleep as possible and to take my vitamins every day. A typical mom answer, but I can't say I expected much help from her. After hanging up the phone, I realized that she too thought I was just going crazy, but it was too real. I couldn't just be imagining it. I decided to get out of the house to get my mind off of it. I went for another long bike ride, and when I got back, I went to the store again, specifically to buy the air fresheners. The fresh smell would definitely do my mind some good. Before getting in line to check out, I ran into Jerry from the orientation. We had a quick chat. I talked about my daily activities in the new neighborhood, biking, shooting hoops at the park, and a lot of movies. He asked me where I went to go biking, as he knew of some great bike trails in the area. I told him I went biking over by the woodsy side of the neighborhood, as it's only a few blocks away from my street. "What street is that?" he asked me, to which I replied, "Maple Drive." A look of worry suddenly spread across his face as he seemed to be instantly consumed in his phone typing away. "What's wrong?" I asked him. He lifted the screen of the phone up to my face. "Is this where you live?" he asked. There was a picture on the screen of my house. "What? How did you know? Why is that picture online?" Jerry went on to explain that before me, there was a couple living there. The neighbors claimed that they always heard the couple fighting and the sounds of glass breaking, and then he dropped a bomb. He told me that one day, the scream of the woman could be heard by all the surrounding neighbors, and shortly after, one of the neighbors found the woman's body with her head missing. The story was such horrifying news to me. I had no idea about the house's past history. I left the store shaking in my feet, feeling like my legs were getting weaker as I walked to my car. I got lunch at Wendy's and took a long detour back home, trying to think everything out. Things were starting to make sense. The low price, the old furniture, the broken glass. But one thing wasn't accounted for. The smell. The horrible odor in the house, specifically in that closet. I had to get home and find out what was in the closet. After getting home, I immediately ran straight to the extra bedroom with the closet. I swung open the closet door to have a blast of foul air hit me right in the face. The smell seemed even more unbearable than before. I ravaged through the closet, throwing all the hanging ties and jackets out onto the king-sized bed. There was nothing at all. There was absolutely nothing else in there besides the ties and jackets. It was just a regular closet. I felt a headache coming on. It didn't make sense. I plugged the air freshener into the outlet in the closet and shut the door, not even bothering to hang the ties and jackets back up. I didn't understand where the odor was coming from, but it didn't matter anymore. The air freshener would take care of it. I walked out of the bedroom, but with the feeling of having missed something. I didn't really know what, but I felt like my brain was trying to tell me something. I didn't dwell on it though. I was more focused on calling my mom and telling her about the history of the house. We were not warned or informed of this history, and I intended on making a case of it. I tried calling my mom 3 times, and on the 3rd time she finally picked up. She informed me that she was just getting home from a long and stressful drive home during a snowstorm. I completely forgot that it was cold in New Jersey. She told me to hang on, that she was taking her boots off. And then it hit me. Boots. The boots. My heart dropped. There were jackets and ties, but no boots. Where the hell were the boots that I saw in the closet 2 days ago? I turned to the bedroom door, and there it was. The head of the woman, peering down the hall at me. This time, I couldn't even get a scream out. The head began to move out further into the hall until a tall body emerged into sight. It was somebody in raggy, ripped clothing covered in bloodstains, and they were wearing the woman's face. The huge figure charged down the hall towards me, but I was already halfway down the stairs. The sound of the boots stomping on the stairs was right behind me. As I was at the front door trying to unlock and open it, I felt two hands grab my shoulders and shove me to the floor. I lay defenseless in the corner, held down by the towering figure. With only my legs free, I had only one option. I kicked the figure in the groin, and he collapsed down, groaning in pain. I thanked my lucky stars he was a man, and pushed him off of me, freeing myself. I opened the front door and ran to my car, driving about 5 blocks away before calling the police. Unfortunately, the man was already gone. I had a pretty good idea of who the man was, and gave a tip to the police. Of course, they already had a good idea as well, and it didn't really do them any good. I still don't understand how I mistook it for hallucinations. I'm still trying to figure out where he managed to hide after each appearance. I think when he was at the edge of my bed, he simply hid under my bed for the rest of the night. And it only terrifies me to think what would happen had I simply looked under. I don't know why he toyed with me though. Why didn't this sick freak just kill me if that was his end goal? Or maybe it wasn't. Hopefully I'll never know. It's scary to think that that man is still out there. I moved back with my family after that and refused to move back out of state. My dad helped me get my foot in the door at the company he works for, so I think I'm alright employment-wise. But I still think of the experience every night, and sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I can swear that I see that woman's head peering over to me in my bed.